people joining. Hello, everyone. Just give us a few minutes. We're just going to get everyone to join on Facebook as well, and then we will start this lovely session. Oh, lovely. Live on Facebook as well. This is going well. Hello, everyone. Hello. You can wave at me if you can. I know on Instagram you can wave. Or don't. Great. We'll start in just a few minutes. We're just going to allow people to keep connecting on Instagram and Facebook, and then we'll hop on in. Oh, yes. Good job waving. This is lovely. Oh, hi. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Victoria. Hello. Jamie Austin. Long Theatre. Hello, everyone. This is great. Oh, hi, King's Head Theatre. This is great. Lovely. Just give it another few seconds and then I'll jump in. Got lots to share. Oh, Lindsay Ann Barnes. Hello, Lindsay. This is lovely. Oh, Chris. Hello. This is lovely. Got to stay connected during these times. Oh, Alex just joined. Hello, Alex. Great. Well, I'll probably just get stuck in and people obviously will join as they will. Just a quick introduction. My name's Kiki Stevenson. I am the Artistic Programme Coordinator at the Other Palace Theatre in London. Just before I start, huge thank you to Alex Jackson and the King's Head Theatre for having me as part of the this online series. I think it's a really great thing to be providing during these times and allow us to stay connected. Just to say, I'm going to be on for about 30 minutes. I am really, really happy to keep talking about myself and what I do for 30 minutes, so I can go on forever. But it is meant to be interactive, so if you have any questions, please do ask them on both Facebook and Instagram, and I will happily answer them to the best of my ability as we go on. So do keep those coming through. So overview today, I'm just going to be talking about what I do, which is programming musical theatre, which is my day-to-day at the Other Palace. But I also am going to touch a bit on how I got into the industry, my role in particular, and the development, commercial elements of new musical theatre, and hopefully what may be most useful is some tips and tricks if you're a writer or creative in approaching venues, producers, and programmers. And that's to say, this is all very personal, so other programmers, producers, venues may have different ideas, but I can only give what I think is useful. So again, my name is Kiki Stevenson. I'm the Artistic Programme Coordinator at the Other Palace. For those of you who are not familiar with the Other Palace, it is one of the 7 venues as part of LW Theatres, which is owned by Andrew Lloyd Webber, so you probably know who that is. But if you're not familiar with his work, he's written some small shows like Jesus Christ Superstar, Cats, Phantom of the Opera, but the list goes on. The Other Palace was formerly the St. James Theatre. It was bought by LW Theatres just over 3 years ago to become a home for new musicals and new musical theatre development. Our venue has 2 spaces. We have the 300-seat main house theatre, where we host longer commercial runs of musicals. So you may have been to the venue or you may have heard of shows like Big Fish, Heathers, Eugenius, Amelie, and most recently Be More Chill. And hopefully the life of Be More Chill is not over. We also have our 100-seat studio theatre, which is where we do shorter runs, predominantly of new musical theatres, concerts. We also do a lot of developmental work down there, including workshops and our initiatives, which I will touch on a little bit later. Really condensed version about me and how I got into theatre. As you may know or have noticed, I don't have a British accent. I did not grow up here. I am American. I grew up in Connecticut, so just outside of New York City. I went to a very liberal college, no tests, no grades, and I was able to basically make my own curriculum. So I really honed my love and skill of theatre at that point. I then moved to New York City for 5 years and kind of bounced around in a lot of different theatre jobs. Did a bit of theatre marketing. I worked for a playwrights organization, focusing on new work there. And then I ended up in corporate events, which was predominantly based in the need for money, which is fair enough. I think we can all understand that. But I did corporate events for about 3 years until the point I decided that I wanted to get back into theatre. which brought me to the UK. I moved to get my master's at Central in theatre criticism and dramaturgy. I started working at the Other Palace 2.5 years ago, and I found that the organisation and the role of artistic programme coordinator really married my passions for informing and shaping new work with musical theatre. I think a lot of people get into theatre because they do musicals when they're younger, and that's no different for me. I mean, there's irony in the fact that the first show I was ever in was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I am now working for a theatre owned by Andrew Lloyd Webber, but what can I say? I think the reason I wanted to go into that a bit is a lot of younger people in the industry are trying to break into the industry, kind of ask me the question of how I got here, how did I get to do the job that I honestly love, and it is very cool on the outside as well. And I think the long and short version is there is no one path. You can't do anything right, you can't do anything wrong. I think you need to find, as an artist or as someone in this industry, exactly what you feel passionately about, and you can dabble. There's nothing wrong in trying a bit of this and a bit of that to find out what you want, which is exactly what I did. And not to give away my exact age, but it's to say that it wasn't until my 30s that I figured out exactly what I wanted to do, and I think you should have the freedom wherever possible to experiment and try, and wherever you end up is probably a good place to celebrate. So that's me in a nutshell. Not that, that's the main focus of this, so we'll just move on in. I think what's going to be important about this session is, while my focus personally is in new musical theatre, that a lot that can be taken away is applicable for new work in general. Again, some of it is going to be quite specific to musicals, but hopefully other people can find this useful. And again, I encourage you, as I go along, if you have any questions, have them come through on the Instagram and Facebook, and I will do my best to answer those. So why musical theatre? Good question. I personally love all types of theatre. I will see pretty much anything. I think it's, again, ironic to say, I used to work in a circus venue, so I really see a lot of different things. And again, I've always had the passion for theatre, but I've always loved the form of musical theatre as well. It's quite unnatural compared to your standard kitchen sink drama. It's not natural for us to go around our daily lives and sing and dance. And as much as I would personally love a band to follow me around and orchestrate everything I do in my life, that's not natural. That's not how we go through the world. So there is something really amazing about seeing that heightened reality on stage, and how we can just become so immersed in that music and that movement. And musical theatre has evolved a lot in the past 20 to 30 years from the standard classics that maybe our parents listened to, and the form has it's been allowed to tackle some quite interesting themes and explore human nature, maybe a lot more than those classics allowed. Oh, hello, Kevin. Thank you for waving. Nice to see you. So yeah, so some of my personal favorite musicals don't fall into that classic, chorus line tap dance numbers. I love Next to Normal. I love Spring Awakening, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, Hadestown. If you're not familiar with any of these, they're all on Spotify. Highly recommended. Yeah, but because of that musical element, we can connect with people, not just in our standard, theatre community ways and that shared live experience, but it also allows us to connect on another level where we can listen to that soundtrack over and over. We can connect to that song, and it potentially maybe allows us to connect with the characters, the themes, the story a bit better than going to see just a straight kitchen drama play at a theatre. And that's why I love musical theatre. And again, because of this shift in musical theatre to allow us to tackle more serious topics, for example, I think there's a really big gap and a great opportunity for the UK to develop new musical theatre. And I think we can all acknowledge that America and Broadway in particular does a really good job of that. And they've got a really clear path already set out, where it's commission, development, workshop, more development, off Broadway. There's a very clear path, and because of that, because there's that clear there's that proven commercial success of reaching Broadway, producers or venues are more willing to commit and invest time, money, space for these early stage musicals as a development path to the more well trodden on Broadway than potentially in London thus far. And I think it's key. There's that return on investment. So that model's proven. And I think the UK is starting to catch up on that. And I think, there's been some really brilliant success stories. Six or Jamie are really good examples of homegrown British musicals that are successful, and then transferring to Broadway. So it's starting, and I think we can just do a lot more to strengthen that. And this may be a bit obvious, but I think it's important to mention that musicals take a lot longer to write and develop than plays. And again, this is a very gross generalization, but follow me with this. Typically plays have one playwright, and you can sit down and you can focus and you can write, and obviously there'll be workshops and development. But that's quite a simple, singular process. We can acknowledge that musicals can have, a composer, a lyricist, a book writer, and sometimes more than one of each. So it's potentially a much more collaborative writing process, and that just takes time. I think it's a well-known fact that Hamilton took 7 to 8 years to write and develop before it hit Broadway. And Wikipedia is a wealth of information. There was 11 years between the first tour of Hadestown in 2007 and until it came to the National Theatre in London in 2018, and then to Broadway in 2019. So we're talking about long journeys, and that journey takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. And I think we need to, continue the conversation to make sure that those things are being invested into the development of new musicals. Hi, Conan. Oh, heads up, volume very low, even one fully turned up. Okay, I'll try to be louder. If anybody else is having that issue, I'll be even louder. Apologies if it's due to partially to the roadworks happening outside my flat. Good times. Some of the ways that we are helping that development process at the Other Palace is through our initiatives program, which I mentioned earlier. So we have a few ways that we can encourage early career or shows that are in quite early stages of development to kind of move along that development path. So first one is called Creatives Connect, and it's just a fancy name for Chris Shepherd, no issues with sound. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Creatives Connect is a fancy name we've put together for a networking evening. And we try to hold those, obviously caveat when physical theatre spaces are open, about 4 times a year. And it's just an opportunity for people who are in the industry to meet other directors, writers, producers, fill in the blank. And hopefully those connections will help either move your project along or connect you with people who would be able to give good dramaturgical feedback. I think that particularly if you're an early career artist, early stages, I strongly recommend going to as many networking opportunities as possible. I'm also there, so if you ever wanted to come see me at the Creatives Connect, you're more than welcome to come find me. But again, the industry is not about necessarily what you do, but who you know. So I think as many people as you can connect with is only a good thing. It's not going to be a bad thing, we'll put it that way. Another one of our initiatives is the Other Masterclass, and this is much more geared towards performers, but is an opportunity for performers and West End stars to work together and work on new material. Not necessarily new material, but potentially audition material. And then Potentially the most important is All That Scratch, which is our new musical theatre podcast. And actually, All That Scratch is the reason I kind of got asked to do this, in that my partners on that project are Alex Jackson and Charlie Norman, who are probably watching. Hi guys. And they both were trainee directors at the King's Head, and they basically came to me with this idea of doing a podcast which would focus on showcasing new musical theatre in all stages of development. So we have done one complete season, and we were into our second season when unfortunately theatres were closed, but that hasn't stopped us. We are in the middle of doing a special at-home episode, kind of catching up with some of the shows that were on season 1. So keep an eye out for more information on that. So those are kind of specific ways that the other palaces are supporting new musicals, but also we do offer some in-kind space for workshops, so shows can get on their feet, get some people in the room for feedback, and I think that is an incredibly important process in writing musical theatre and theatre in general. But it's really hard to envision text, movement, song on a page, or even with demo recordings. I think it's really, really important to get some people in a room, get it on its feet, and you'll see where the holes are. And again, this is kind of one of those tips I give, writers when they ask me for feedback on the show, is music is incredibly important to a musical. There's no way a musical would exist without music. But I think the strongest shows that we engage with are shows that have a really good story. And if you don't have a story, you don't have a show. And I always suggest seeing what happens when you take the music out. What happens if you take the music out? Because, does the story still stand up? And I think that's maybe a really important exercise to do if you are a writer, to see, does the structure of your show work? What else did I want to say on that one? Yeah, and I know I'm giving a lot of comparisons to Broadway, and I think Broadway, again, are doing a really brilliant job at developing new musicals. And I do honestly think that the new musical theatre industry has seen a lot of positive change in the past 5 years or so. I think where people may have been a bit more uncertain about going to see a workshop, I think people in the industry are more willing to go, so they can engage with the work on that level. As I explained, it's a bit difficult to fully realize or imagine a musical just with demos and a script. But I think there's still more room to grow, and I think everyone who's producing or commissioning new musical work can work to change the way we consume that, and that in those development stages, and make sure we are supporting those writers. So I think the media's part, again, please stop me if you've got questions. I am literally talking to 2 pictures of myself. Are kind of new musical tips and tricks, and I do think these can be applicable to creatives in the theatre industry as well. And these, again, are very personal, so people may disagree, and that's absolutely fine. These are, I think, important things, particularly when you're approaching someone who's in a role of a producer or a venue programmer. I think these are really important things to keep in mind. So going back to the writing, I want all writers, composers, lyricists, please write passionately, write about what you think is important and personal, and the worst thing is when you are writing something that you don't believe in. But please also write fiscally aware. I think it's really, really hard to get a 25-person show, 10-person orchestra put on. That's not really feasible. So be aware that those producers and venues, when they're looking at your work, they're saying, how much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost for me to put this new musical on? And keep in mind that actor and musicians' rates are fixed by equity. So the difference between writing a 3-hander actor musical versus 8-person musical with 12-person ensemble and 5-piece band can be like £10,000 a week. And that's a big chunk of change. And I think this is even more important in our current times when the future of theatres is so uncertain. Money is going to be an even bigger question moving forward. And I'm not saying that we should look for a trend of two-hander musicals, even though those definitely have a place. It's just be aware that that's going to be a huge consideration when venues or producers are reading your work. Alex, you have a question. What would you say to someone who has an idea for a new musical but doesn't know where to start writing it? Really good question. Thank you, Alex. I think there's, oh, that's a good question. Right. I think the question is back to them is how much writing experience does this person with the idea have? And if it's a quite confident writer, I would say just go ahead and write it and see what happens. I think if you're not that confident, surround yourself, and this is also if you're confident, surround yourself with amazing collaborators. As I mentioned, new musical theatre is not something you can write in a vacuum. And maybe you can. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong and someone's written a musical in a vacuum. But again, surround yourself with people that you trust and whose opinions you trust, and people you want to work with. So that if you're writing the book, find somebody, a really great composer and lyricist who understand your vision, who want to get on board with this journey, and see what comes out. And with that, if a relationship is not working, don't be afraid to, peacefully cut ties. And this kind of ties into another point that I'm going to make shortly. I don't think there's anything wrong in trying something out with a collaborator and deciding that's not really the direction of where you were going to go. And as long as it's amicable, an amicable separation, I think that's fine. I hope that answers your question, Alex. But yes, going back to writing responsibly and being aware of the costs involved when writing a show, I think is really, really important. I think perhaps writers may forget this sometimes. As much as theatre is an art form and it should be celebrated as an art form, it's also a business. Again, I think this might be an obvious one, but from a venue perspective, venues and producers need to make money. Venues can't operate without incoming funds. So they need to be making money with audiences buying tickets. Those audience members need to be spending money on the bar. They need to be buying ice cream, buying merchandise, buying programs. And usually those margins of profit are so slim on musicals that there's so many more outgoing costs that the income is so much less than if you were doing, again, a two-hander play at the Royal Court. And shout out to the Royal Court because I used to usher there. But it's a different model. So just be aware, again, that is what producers and venues are thinking. And as well, I would always suggest write concisely, right? If you're a musical you think is potentially actually better suited as a 10-person piece, that's absolutely fine. And if you find a venue who's willing to pay for that, fantastic. But I think it's always better to write for 4 or 5 people and have the ability to scale up. And really great example of this is Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which ran on Broadway. It had a 10-person cast in its early stages, but when it moved to Broadway, it added a large ensemble of actor musos, which allowed them to fill the space that they were in. So if you're going from a small space, and also be aware of where you think this show would go. We've got 2 spaces, obviously, at the other palace. We've got our 300-seat main house and our 100-seat studio. Know what sort of space you think this will fit in. I can't fit a 10-person show in the studio. That's kind of sweet spot is around 4, 5, 6 people. So it's the moment you come to me with a 10-person show for the studio, I know it's not going to fit. Another tip and trick. Please be open to feedback, especially if you're asking for it. If you ask for it, then and aren't willing to receive it, then please consider not asking for it from the beginning. And I think everyone acknowledges that writing is a deeply personal process, But that outside critical and dramaturgical eye is also really important to the development process. And as I said before in response to Alex's question, surround yourself with creatives that believe in the same ethos as you. Share and ask for feedback only when you're ready to hear it. But at the end of the day, it's your work and you have to stand up behind it. So don't make every single suggestion or edit that people are recommending unless you agree that that is right for the show. So take the feedback which is helpful and useful and discard the rest. Again, this might be very simple but and obvious, but please always be kind. And if you can't be kind, at least be polite. This industry is too small, and if you start having negative interactions with people, people will speak, and that will spread, and people will not want to work with you. And I strongly believe this applies to social media as well. Social media is a brilliant tool to connect with people, to share thoughts and events with the industry, but please don't use it to get on a soapbox and criticize others. That social media is even more damning than potentially in-person conversations, because it could potentially live there forever, and even if you delete it, someone might have screenshotted it, and that will just circulate around like wildfire. So I can speak from personal experience. I absolutely remember people that I've not had pleasant interactions with. I don't have a Twitter, so from that angle, that's purely as an observer. But I would absolutely be more wary with working with someone that I've not had a pleasant experience with in the future. And I think when applying this to venue relationships, I cannot emphasize how far a thank you will go. In person, in email, doesn't matter. I think just the going out there and thanking someone for the support, the time, whatever it may be, goes such a long way in solidifying in that venue person's mind. Oh yes, I would absolutely, have another conversation with them or invite them to come do something in the venue. I think my mom's on the stream. Hi, Mom. Oh, she just thumbs up. That's everyone. Mom, that's my mom on Instagram. I was just gonna say, my mom always taught me to write thank you notes after getting birthday and Christmas gifts. So I kind of just tried to apply that in my professional life as well. And I think you go such a long way. And I think you can, this next tip and trick, please keep this in mind for if you want to cold contact an organization. And I think that I do that as well, even in my job now. I think it's important to connect with people that you think will be useful. So these are really quick, and I know I've only got about 2 more minutes, so I will fly through these. Please don't BCC me into a mass email. It makes such a difference in me receiving an email that I know you want to speak to me or the other panelists. So please do your research into the who's who of the organization and email that person, dear Kiki. Even if you don't have my email and you're forced to email the info at email, knowing that email was intended for me, I'm already more willing to receive your email. And if it's unavoidable to BCC people in, please make sure it's BCC and not a CC. Obviously, with GDPR in the UK, the moment I see my information being shared without my consent, I will have my backup. So, also, please ensure you spell the person you're trying to contact's name correctly. I do this as well. I type very quickly, and I need to double check and reread all my emails before I send them out. I have a slightly funny name, Kiki. The moment someone misspells that, I will again already have my backup. Kevin, I see your question. I'm going to come back to that right at the end if you don't mind. Bear with me. Just trying to fly through these. Again, if you're inquiring about bringing a show to a venue, please do your research into the spaces that they have to ensure they'll fit your show, and make sure you know their programming model. For example, the Other Palace is a receiving house. We do not produce work in-house. So if you approach me asking me to fund your piece or produce your piece, I will already assume you've not done your research into the venue, and have my back up and say, and now I will respond. I was trying to respond to all the emails, but I think do your research, know the people that you're going out to, know the venue, know their model, know what space you want to be in, and go from there. And again, sum that all up, just tailor your email to pitch yourself best to the organization. Please do your research. Also, please don't be upset if you don't hear back from the venue contact right away, particularly if you're not emailing them directly. I get so many emails daily, and I think there's about 600 emails in my inbox at the moment. And I'm guilty of this. If I have other projects that need to take priority, I will take longer to get back to your email. And again, I try to go back to everyone, but it will take me a long time. Don't take that personally, please. It just takes time for me to get my head into a cold email that I have to introduce myself to whatever you're trying to pitch to me. Personally, I'm not against if you want to follow up with me in a week or two and bring that email to the top of my inbox. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I think please just be mindful that, again, we are incredibly busy and we will do our best to get back to you, but it's not personal. While I had more to say, I know I'm at 1:30 and Kevin asked a question. Kevin has asked, I directed a new musical last year called Dawn of Silence, which was on at Tristan Bates Theatre, hoping to do it again in the future. Any tips on getting producers interested and fundraising? Very good question, Kevin. And that is also a very tricky one because there, again, is no clear right way or wrong way to do that. I would obviously recommend going to funding bodies. Arts Council, PRS, all have grants that you can apply for funding. I also, if you're approaching producers, I would try to put together as the best pitch pack that you possibly can. So photos from the Tristan Bates run, a description of the show. If you have a video recording of that run, I always like to interact with new work by seeing it, even if I wasn't in the live space. I like to see it. If that's not possible, do send through recordings. This was one of my tips that I've had to kind of jump over, but again, music is a really important way to interact with new musicals. So wherever possible, try to submit the strongest recording you have, even if you have to ask a friend to sing it for you, and it's just with a keyboard track, that's absolutely fine. But it's really hard for me personally to suspend my disbelief enough to get over like potentially an out of tune singer. I just recommend presenting your work in the best way possible and providing as much information that you think will be useful, but don't overload people. I would never ask to see a script at first introduction to a new musical. I would rather have a synopsis. I'd rather know what the development of the piece has been to date. So knowing that you've done the Tristan Bates run is really important, and trying to see it would be really important. Fundraising as well. Again, it's tricky. I would always recommend, especially if you're an early career writer, getting a producer on board. There's a reason a producer is a whole nother job in this industry. There's a lot going into it other than just funding. So if you can connect with someone who is a producer and they're willing to take your show on board, I think that's brilliant. Again, the pitch pack's really important. Go to those networking events, make those connections so it isn't a cold email. I would try to avoid asking your friends and family for money as much as possible. And that is a route people go down. I would personally try to avoid it. And I know I'm over, so I will leave it there. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a really good question. And again, thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to the King's Head. Thank you, Alex Jackson, for having me. And I hope everyone stays safe and well during these times. And hopefully we'll see you at the King's Head and the other palace when theatres can reopen. Great. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend, everyone. Bye.